presentation. Okay, guys, so today is the first day of the webinar, and our special guest is Mrs. Rose Johnson Smith. So, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself before we hop straight into this presentation?
Sure. Hi, Shalicia. Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be the first as it relates to your webinar. Pleasure is all mine. As you've already said my name, I am one of the directors of Love and Restoration Ministries, otherwise called LARM. I want to consider myself to be a motivational speaker. It's a talent, it's a gift I believe that I've received from God. I'm also a life coach. I love counseling because I served as guidance counselors for over a decade, over 18 going to 20 years, and I currently supervise them. I love people. Love and Restoration means a lot of reaching out. We just recently had our marriage conference, and we are planning a premarital webinar in October coming. We are all about the disfranchised, the poor, the needy. We do health fairs for communities. We reach out to persons who are in need with hundreds of food packages. We collaborate. We reach out to the infirmary. So we're all about of giving love. We've just finished a series called the 7 R's in Restoration. And we are going to be starting another series of 7 secrets in mushrooming into greatness. I believe in greatness and that people should live to their fullest potential.
All right, thank you so much for introducing.
And
guys, as you heard, they have to do a lot with charitable things, and if any way you can give, you can always contact me, or as I said, I'll leave their socials in the description, so you can always contact LARM. And if you want to make a contribution, if you want to join the committee, anything that you really want to do to just contribute and give back to your country or even your parish, your community, you can always link up with them. So today,
and another quick little thing is that we're on the different platforms: Instagram, Love and Restoration Ministries, Facebook, YouTube, LARM Ministries. So yeah.
All right. So today you're going to be presenting to us like just general knowledge on conflict, right? So can you just identify for us really what you would classify conflict to be?
Conflict is a friction, a disagreement, a misunderstanding between individuals, and very interestingly, it also can be interpersonal within you. Did you know you can have conflict inside and it emanates outside? It can be interpersonal with another person, and it can be with a group, or it can be at your workplace, or it can be within the family context. And as I said earlier, it's defined as friction between individuals. And this happens due to persons' differences, opinions, ideas, beliefs, values, needs, or objectives.
That's true. Okay, so when we have conflict, are there different types of conflict? I know you mentioned like interpersonal where we have internal conflicts, but are there like different type of conflicts?
Like I said, interpersonal, it's what's happening inside of you. Interpersonal, what's happening with somebody else. And I'm showing some pictures. Okay, will your viewers be able to see those pictures?
Yeah, we're seeing it.
Right. And intergroup conflict. So if you look at this particular picture, you see the different colors representing different type or different kind of people, of personalities. So it can be intergroup as well.
Before you skip that, if you can go back to the other slide you had, I remember that we did a personality test when I was in a workshop, and they were saying that you have some personalities that don't necessarily work well with other personalities. For example, they gave the orange personality where they're a type of person, they'll go with the flow, or they're more free spirited rather than I think it was a gold person. Yes, where they're more organized and they're more rigid on they have to follow a certain thing and they have to do this way and have to plan with them. If you don't do that, it's like it causes a lot of stress and everything. What are some myths, as I see you land on that one, what are some myths about conflict that we often believe?
Yeah, I like how you, coming to the myth, but I like how you talked about the different types of personalities because self-awareness is quite vital
Mm-hmm.
to conflict resolution and to the conflicts that might arise. For example, if you are a personality that is hot-headed,
Mm-hmm.
or it depends on who you are, that's how you will resolve conflict. If you do not listen, or if you are somebody who you're passive, you don't want to talk, so you give people the right in other words, conflict situation, you have it being win-win. And that's a good kind of conflict situation. You have some with win-lose. The person, based on her personality or whatever, wants to win at all times and the other person to lose. Or you even have lose-lose. That's not the best. The win-win is something that we can work towards. However, sometimes this might not happen because of who the individual is. So a quick personality test to check who you are really will enable this process. As we speak about myths and truths in conflict, I'll say it and you tell me what it is. You think it's a myth or a truth? For
Okay.
example, conflict is only at work. What do you think?
Well, we all know that that is a myth and that's false because we have
Yeah.
conflict at home, we have conflict with our friends, and as you mentioned before, we have conflict internally.
Yes. So very good. Yeah, yeah. You got that one, Shalice. Yeah. So conflict is dysfunctional in the workplace.
Mm. No, because not all conflict is bad, I guess.
There you
I
go.
I will say that sometimes we can cause a conflict because of our dysfunction.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like it because conflict can be positive and
Mm-hmm.
it's inevitable. It's
Yes.
inevitable that if you are with people, there's going to be conflict because we have our differences. And as we said earlier, we have our responsibilities. So,
Mm-hmm.
it will happen. It
Mm-hmm.
will happen. The other one says conflict represents communication breakdown. Do you think that's true or false?
Um, I think it's true to a certain aspect. Yeah, I think it's true
Yeah,
because a lot of times I think conflict arises because of a lack of communication
there you
and
go.
misunderstanding. Yeah.
There you go. You got it because there has to be a breakdown in the communication. If it's with
Mm-hmm.
marriage, if it's with family, if it's at work, it's a breakdown. It's a matter of people having a misunderstanding or
Mm-hmm.
thought they heard what was not said. You understand? So yes, and we we cannot avoid conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Conflict arise, we should not run away with it. Some people have some kind of ways of dealing with conflict where they call it the flight or the fight, whether
Mm-hmm.
they're going to stand up to fight it. And I'm not talking about literal fist
Physical
fight,
fight.
but you are having an argument, you're arguing it out, or are you going to run away from it? Again, your personality comes into play because if you are a passive personality, you might want to avoid it and not be confrontational. And
Mm-hmm.
and so I mentioned the word confrontational,
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the ways that people deal with conflict. And when
Okay.
you're dealing with conflict, you need to look to see if it's high on the continuum or
Mm-hmm.
if it's low, right? So
Yes.
so if it's low, people might very well become confrontational, and that's
Mm-hmm.
not very good. You have to think before you speak. And in counseling, we would say that you need to be an active listener. You have compromise. That's not a bad one. Because when you're married, you don't want to behave as though you're always right when a conflict arises. So you can compromise so that you can come to an understanding. But there are other ways of dealing with conflict as well. As they come to my memory, I will tell you them.
Okay, so before we hop into that, we did mention something about communication and bad communication. So I want to ask the question, why do you think people have such bad communicative skills?
Well, skills are something you learn,
Mm-hmm.
and you can unlearn them too. So your background has a lot to do with it. If when you were growing up, you were, shut up and you're not able to express yourself, or when you were at school, you are just, passive and you don't speak and others speak for you. Whatever way, you garnered those skills can be unlearned. And remember that as it relates to communication, it's a message that you are passing forward. So you have to understand that when you are transferring messages, there can be noise. And I'm not only talking about literal noise, but issues that might be happening that will prevent the communication from coming across as how you would have wanted it to be. And so these are skills you develop. You have to develop the skills of listening. You have to develop the skills of being assertive. In counseling, they call it the attending skills. You have to develop these skills so that you are able to communicate. If you're not a good communicator, conflicts will never be resolved. So if you look into somebody's relationship and you see a man who thinks that the best way to resolve conflict is to use up your hand and slap somebody, because when you had issues back in your childhood days, you were only beaten, you were not allowed to come to the table and talk about it, then you might take this over into your relationship and your adult life.
That's true.
So communication is key.
So on that note, what are 5 ways or tips to first identify if you're a good communicator, and if not, what are 5 ways to improve that?
You will identify that you are a good communicator depending on how you relate to individuals, all right? If you find that you're always getting into a fuss, and if you find that you're always, you're just silent, and you have some people who give you the silent treatment, so you know that they're not pleased and they will be vexed with you, over time or whatever, then you know that you have some issues with communication. In my mind, the different ways to become a good communicator: one, you need to read. And you can develop your research skills to see, to get a touch of who you really are and what you're capable of doing and how you should deal with it. Another thing is that you can seek help. You can go to a therapist. Other people don't want to hear about going to therapy and all of those things. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to actually tap into your life, your circumstances. Many times I've had to go back to look at what obtained in my household, when I was a child, or what happened. I was an inhibited child. I never used to speak. I was so, I had such low self-esteem about the way I look and the way I feel, and these will impact your communication skills. So you need to build on this. Some people are angry and will push you away because they don't understand who they are and what they're capable of. So those are some of the tips that I would say. You read, you seek help externally, you research yourself, and you look at how you respond to people generally.
So how does I'm between the 2 words, either vulnerability and transparency, but I think it's basically the same thing. But how do they play an important part in self-awareness? Because a lot of people tend to not want to be vulnerable or transparent with other people. how do we know that we can be transparent with ourselves if we're not even doing it to others?
Well, this one little word, trust,
Mm.
it will become something that is very important, because you know that this person is not confidential. As soon as you say something to this person, the whole world will know, whether via text or whatever means you young people use to communicate. Then you would not want to share certain things with that kind of person. You need people who you trust, people who you can confide in, people who believe in you, you know, before you can become vulnerable to them. And even during that time, I am not going to allow myself to be totally vulnerable. You know why? We are people and we are imperfect, and situations are imperfect. So there's no perfect situation. So unless you are paying somebody to listen to you and you know that this person has to, be confidential in whatever she's doing, you don't want to go all out to be vulnerable, especially to certain types of persons. But you can be yourself with just about anybody. Did I answer your question adequately?
Kinda. There's one part. All right, so let me rephrase them. Um, you mentioned having low self-esteem at one point in your life. What were 3 ways that you became self-aware of this, and what did you do to help yourself? Did you go to
Yeah, you're
therapy, as you
right.
said?
You're right, because I could not name it when I was growing up that
Mm-hmm.
it was low self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
I know I would be is shy and inhibited and stuff. I think I started getting rid of that when I became close to my grade 6 teacher,
Mm-hmm.
who asked me like particular questions. She and her husband, like, um, tell me 10 things you like about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a long time to find one thing.
Mm-hmm.
But when they say, tell me 10 things you hate about yourself,
Long
that
list.
came in seconds. I
Yeah.
hate my nose. Now by the way, now I love my nose, because I realized that this is a nose I inherited from my father. I
Mm-hmm.
hated my lips. I love them now. I read them up because I want people to see my beautiful lips. So, and I hated other things about myself. And when they did that, I realized that, I really am very shy, and I have poor self-esteem. My
Mm-hmm.
self-esteem, I found that out properly when I went to do a first degree that had some counseling element to it, guidance and counseling. And so we had to first be self-aware before we could think of going out there to help others.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to actually go through some amount of counseling. And it was during that process of going through that kind of counseling and sitting in the classes and listening about the different theories and the
Mm-hmm.
different skills that caused me to realize that, hey, I have an issue with self-esteem. I had an issue with negative thoughts. I have an issue with stress and with anger and those things. And so that brought to light who I am and who I wanted to be.
So, are there any books or anything that you could recommend to watch, listen to that could help with just
Well,
being aware of ourselves?
Shalisa, to be honest, my heroine, my star is Joyce Mayer. So Joyce has lots of material on this, because if you know
Mhm.
Joyce May, you know that she was sexually abused,
Mhm.
emotionally, physically, and stuff like that. And she suffered from the same low self-esteem. So one of her first books, well, you remember cassette that people used to use, put in the radio, click play and stuff like that. That was when I first met her. She had about several series of rejection cassette. And
Mhm.
listening to those cassettes made me realize who I am and who I needed to be. And then when I started to find myself and all that, I started researching her. And one of her first books I read is The Confident Woman. And man, you learn how to conquer your fear,
Mhm.
conquer your fear and deal with it. I had a fear to speak, and look at me now. You know, you have to
Yeah.
conquer those anxieties. So when I just started speaking in public, I used to shake like a leaf. So I used to say to myself, all right, you know what? I have to speak. So I have to speak to that fear. So I'm going to buy myself a mic. You know, the microphone you do have to hold. So nobody will know that you're shaking. And then I say, all right, listen, I have to be a motivational speaker. So I'm going to get myself a podium. So you can hide behind this podium. So even if you're shaking, nobody knows, because it's not going to be sounded. You won't hear it in my voice. And I started doing that, but I realized that the more I speak, is the more I get better at it. So I really didn't need all of those things. I could speak without them. And today, look at me. Also, I read Ben Carson's Think Big book. I got some insights into that. I read a number of materials, and Joyce's materials are my main materials, but Ben Carson, I can't think of others now, but I can always give it to you and you can pop it up on the screen.
No problem. All right, so I see you're on the slide of effects of conflict, so can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, if conflict is in the picture, then a number of things can happen. Loneliness, you know, negative thoughts. You see fear, that big F word, fear. Those are negative effects of conflict, you know, unhappiness, anger, withdrawal, you know, insecurity. Conflict can cause these things because, especially if you are somebody who is suffering from a low self-esteem, you will think that, you know, this conflict exists because this person doesn't like me. You understand? This person doesn't like me. So this is why we can't come to an understanding, especially if it's a partner of yours. You know, you will think that, you know, man, you know, what is happening here? And then it depends too on the gender, in my humble opinion. Females with conflict different than males. I will be having an issue with my husband, and as soon as his phone rings, he says, "Hello, hi, how are you?" And you hear him talking in the background. And with me, yeah, what's up? Girl, me there, just having a fight, and I feel too good, you know? Head start hurt you and all of those things, because if you're having a conflict, the physical effects will be there as well, you know?
Yeah.
And the emotional effects will be there, and it will impact your productivity. So, you know, especially a female, you had a fight this morning when you go to school. What do you think you're going to do if you're a teacher? We'll take you up on the picnic them. Because it has not been resolved. So it can reduce productivity, and it can delay the decision-making progress, you know? And so those are some of the negative effects of conflict. The unhappiness, the loneliness, the fear, the withdrawal, you name it.
I also saw on the screen before that it also reduces productivity. And
Yes.
I don't think a lot of persons think about it like that sometimes, because they're just saying that, oh, me and this person have beef and whatever. But if it's in the back of your mind all the time, and if you see this person, you want the other side, technically you're reducing whatever productivity, whether it is your mental, physical, you're reducing all types of productivity.
Yeah,
So,
and especially if conflict exists at the workplace.
yes.
At the workplace, where, you know, bosses are showing preferences to others and biases and all of those things, it will make people become sick, man, and it will affect productivity.
All right. So since we're on this slide, how do you deal with conflict?
All right, so I'm going to look at these general ways. These are some of the things I could not remember. I only remembered a few. But if you look at it, the inner circle, you realize that one way of dealing with conflict is compromising. You see those two little cartoons shaking their hands, because what they're doing is they're maneuvering and they're being conciliatory. Okay, so they are compromising. They're saying, okay, I feel this way, you feel this way. Since we cannot come to a decision, let us deal with it like this. So both of you agree. But you have the dating way of dealing with conflict, which is not a bad thing, so to speak, right? Because you accommodate the differences and the personalities. You have also collaborating, that's like problem solving. You know, what's causing this? How can we deal with this? And so forth. You have, however, the avoiding. And if you notice with the avoiding, that person is running away from it. And that too can be as a result of what happened in this person's background.
Yeah.
You know, seeing daddy beating up on mommy and mommy, you know, doing this and all water dash on them something there. So and furniture mash up on them something there. So in fact, it's a low way of dealing with conflict. You notice the ones that are on the low section of the continuum and the ones that are on the high. The collaborating and the accommodating are on the high. But the avoiding, you know, is on the low as well as the competitive. Because this person is a tough battler. And if two persons are competitive, what do you think is gonna happen, man? Nobody lets go.
Yeah.
You understand? So it's going on and on and on. And as I'm there, I'm wondering if you could have me stop sharing this slide and move on, since we were looking at how to deal with it, to this other one that I was telling you about, a way of dealing with conflict called resolve. Let me hope I can find it. Something just popped up on my screen to prevent me from seeing the sharing. I'm gonna pull it up.
Okay, so before you even reach it out, while you're looking for that, rather, as you mentioned, type of how to resolve conflict with accommodating and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, as a married woman, which style do you think you see more in your marriage?
Oh, you're getting into my business now. You're being passed. Okay. All right. So since I have agreed to do this with you, I think I use a little of everything. You want me to be honest. And it depends on what stage I've reached in my marriage. When we just started out, you know, we didn't know each other very well, so we might have been accommodating, you know, or even competitive until, so you know, when you get married, you're wearing a mask, right? And so as the days go by, the mask and the months and the years, then you take your time, move the mask and stuff like that. And so there were times too when it would be a little competitive, because my husband is a talker. He's able to express himself well. You understand that he did the languages because, you know, at that time he taught Spanish. So I think he could express himself very well. And I don't know if I could express mine very well, just the same. Because of the issues with self-esteem and stuff, sometimes it might feel as though I'm being clouded. So, you know, you want to come out of that mode, so it might be competitive. And, but we have learned now to be compromising. Some things you just have to let go. And we have learned also to be accommodating of each other. And, you know, and respect comes into play where that is concerned. If you remember the other one, I've learned that too. Oh, collaborating, yeah. We're doing a lot of collaborating now, a lot of accommodating and compromising. But so we have left the lower level, you know, because I didn't see my parents resolving conflicts very well. So if there's an issue, you know the head and foot thing, one would asleep there, so the other one would asleep up there, so on. They didn't talk about the conflict. But my father, no, things change, you know, getting more exposure and all of those things. You know, he started learning how to resolve. But maybe by that time, we're gone, because people would have looked at him as a peacemaker, you know, in those days. So yeah, you learn these skills and you have to unlearn them when you go into a relationship or even before you go. Hence the reason we're having that premarital webinar, so people can learn some of these skills before they go into marriage.
Okay. Definitely. Okay. So you can share on
Right.
resolve.
So this is not my idea. I got this slide from a presentation I was a part of, and I liked it. I was reading it a while ago and I liked it. It says use resolve to work through a conflict. And if you notice, the resolve is an acronym.
Mm-hmm.
It's an acronym. So the R signifies reach out. Sit with the person the conflict is with. So the R, reach
Mm-hmm.
out. So sit with, and if you don't necessarily have to sit, you can stand too. But you want to reach out. If you sit down and you vex all
Mm-hmm.
your life, then how is this conflict going to be resolved? So you reach out, that is the R. And if you notice the E connotes engage in a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Use calming techniques if you need to, and take turn to speak. So everybody can't be talking at the same time. You
Mm-hmm.
have to engage in a conversation if you're going to resolve the conflict. So the silence treatment is not a good way to resolve a
Okay, so
conflict.
before you move on right there,
Yes.
I know that especially in the household, a lot of times children might voice, and as a guidance counselor, you might have encountered some of these things before, where children might have said to their parents one thing, but their parents not listening, or they can't really express themselves, or they're just not understanding where they're coming from and the age and da 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 da. How or what advice would you give to the child and to the parent in that instance?
Well, I'm a parent, so that's easy. And in fact, it's true, some of us don't listen.
Mm.
And sometimes, depending on how busy I am, I might not either, but I know that I should.
Mm.
So I will definitely engage. So children know they need to be heard. In fact, that's one of their rights, to be
Mm-hmm.
heard, to be listened to. So I would advise them, though, to be respectful. Now, listen, especially, the little ones are okay, but those who are hitting their teens, sometimes the way the teens speak to their parents might even trigger off a
Mm-hmm.
worse response. I can say to the teens, be respectful when you're voicing your opinion. And
Mm-hmm.
I will say to the parents, be knowledgeable of the developmental stages of your children. Because when they hit 10 to 13 years old, oh
Mm-hmm.
my, a lot of things according to Eric Erickson is going on. So they can Google it, because everybody is on smartphone now. You can look for Eric Erickson and the developmental stage, and
Mm-hmm.
he will tell you from 0 to 5. I can't tell you because I would need to pull him up, from 0 to 5 what is happening. You have
Mm-hmm.
autonomy versus stress, something like that. I don't remember. But
Mm-hmm.
when they reach a certain developmental age,
Mm-hmm.
the teenage bug biting them, the parents have to be aware of that. Because at that time, when they're teens, they go through a lot of peer pressure, and they do prefer their peers to their parents. Right
Mm-hmm.
now, I have to understand my big man son, because he's in his teenage, and he wants to call me dear. Yes, dear. And I think you're good at it too, Shani. You say, yes, dear, like I'm bigger than everybody else. And I have to understand that, they just want to feel as though they're big now, because they're in between the level of manhood and still being a child. So the encouragement I would give to parents is to be aware of the child's developmental pattern and
Mm-hmm.
treat them accordingly. Because when your children start listening to their peers, their
Mm-hmm.
influences more than you, that can be very daunting as a parent. And
Yeah.
you will get irritated and cuss, and if you're a parent to box and thump and kick, you'll do it because you don't understand what they're going through in their heads. So
Mm-hmm.
being aware of their developmental stage is very vital to dealing with the whole issue of conflict at this stage.
I think you kind of answered a question somebody had asked. What do you think it takes to be a good parent, and what are the best things to implement?
To be a good parent, you have to be an active listener.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be understanding. Um, you have to learn about the different stages of development. As I said, you have to be willing to stand back a little. You have to learn how to resolve conflicts positively.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to be a good parent, you have to be caring, and you have to be aware of the needs, and you need to seek help when you need it.
Yes.
And you need to affirm as a good parent, affirm, look at the positive things that are happening and name them, talk about them. Don't only see the bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we can continue with it.
Thank you. So we went through the R and the E, the reach out and the engage in conversation. The S, seek to solve the problem. You have to seek to solve the problem. Talk about the solutions that you both can accept. Let's say it's an issue with the cell phone.
All right.
Yeah, because as a parent, I'm going like crazy. I want to pull up my hair. I want to know why you guys have to be on the phone 24/7. What the heck are you doing on the phone 24/7? How can you lie on your back for the whole day and you're on your phone? It's crazy. So yeah, so if you're that parent who would just take it away, and I guess you have to comprise. Well, it depends on the age group again. Because if it's a child who is supposed to be doing his work or her work and you're using the phone excessively, then it might be that a little timeout is necessary. But you sit down and you talk about it. You don't just grab it because you're the adult. You can say, okay, I noticed that you are spending more time with this gadget more than your schoolwork, and I think I'll have to take away your phone for a week. And that's crazy, but it's at that level. You can't just go to a teenager, especially if they're in their 16, 17, 15, and say you're going to take away their phone. They might rebel and stuff like that. So you have to still always bear in mind the stage that they're at and treat them. So you solve the problem. Oh, you open up. Share your side of the story and express how you feel. When you express how you feel, a lot of people, when they understand where you're coming from, the conflict will be resolved. L, listen, and not just listen, but listen attentively. Listen and hear. Some of us, we hear, but we don't listen. When you listen to the other person to understand his or her point of view. You listen to their feelings. When I spoke to communication, I should say that you have the verbal and non-verbal. So the non-verbal is you're listening to how people look and to what they're saying, right? The body language and stuff like that. So you listen actively. D, voice solutions to resolve the conflict. Don't just leave it hanging. Voice some solution. And E, end on a good note. End on a good note. Not all the times you will end on a good note, but if you really want to resolve a conflict, it will be good if you end on a good note, agree on the solutions, maybe write them down and go back over them. And it's okay to give a compliment, a hug, or a shake of hand. Well, no, we're in COVID, I guess it's an elbow.
You're forced to do it. All right. Well, that's true though. I think, especially, I don't really say like for Christians or spiritual persons, but even even the scripture that basically tells us that we shouldn't let the sun go down on our anger and stuff like that. At one point in my life, I was very, I guess, appreciative and I guess strict. I'm not married. I am not, but I really found it important. Like, we really know the day done. I'm gonna resolve this, but it didn't always happen. And what I found out is that sometimes you have to give people time. Sometimes you have to allow them to breathe, and it might take more than a day. It might take a week, and you have to respect that space for them. So I think a lot of people have to understand that as well, because some people will be adamant that you need to resolve no, and you have to do no, and if it's not done today, if it's not done at this moment, then nothing else can be done, and a lot of people are left hurt.
Yes. Timing is of great significance. But I don't agree with the weed though, it's too long. If the effect of conflict will allow you to be sick or headaches and stress and stuff, you want to deal with the issues. So a week is kind of long. And Mark, I'm not saying that you will agree with everybody and it will end well. Sometimes some people you have to part you have to part relationship with them.
Yeah.
Because they're so toxic and negative, and it's just pulling away from your energy. You don't want to be around those people. You know, you keep them far. You're not vexed with them. You're not whatever, but you just think that these people do not add value to your lives, right? But I think a week in a home setting can be a long time. Give the person a day or so to blow off, but you have to engage in conversation. And the quicker you know is the better, so to speak. Because if this person is abusive, then you want this person to calm down, or even allow that person to go his way and you go yours, to be honest.
That's true. That's true. Is there anything else on the slide that you wanted to go through?
Well, just, I'm a Christian. And so Philippians 2, imitate, verse 4, it says, imitate Christ's humility, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interest of others. We have to bear that in mind when we are dealing with conflict. It's not just about me, myself, and I, but you're thinking of the other persons in this situation, how they must be feeling, how they must be dealing with it. And verse 5 says, in your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ.
Yeah.
And Christ is a peacemaker. You know, even when Christ knew what the others were up to, he still had relationship with them. He knew that, what's his name, was going to betray him, Judas. And he knew that Peter would deny him. He even spoke of it, and Peter denied that he would ever do something like that. And he did it. But Christ forgave them. Because, well, if Judas knew that Christ was going to forgive him, he wouldn't go hang himself. But when Jesus rose, Jesus said to the ladies who he sent the message with, and tell Peter too. So he's coming and he's going to Peter too. So Peter will be in the picture. He's not neglecting Peter because of what Peter did. So, we're not perfect human beings, but we need to understand that we need to forgive, we need to resolve, we need to restore, we need to love, we need to respect.
And on that note, the last question that I have, someone had asked, what is the importance of the mental health preservation when dealing with conflicts of any sort?
That's a great question. That's a great question. And I think I can answer that because I just did a training on mental health literacy. Because a lot of people are illiterate as it relates to our mental health. There is a psychological cognitive behavior therapy where the mind impacts the body, it impacts your action. So whatever is going on in your head can impact what you do as an individual. And so conflict will have a negative impact on your mental health. It can actually weigh you down and affect the way you think and the way you do things. So, if you're, and that is why I said that you should pay attention to how long you allow this thing to be brewing or to continue, because it affects your thought pattern. And your thought pattern has to be well for you to execute and for you to be well. So your mental health is of vital importance when it comes on to resolving conflict.
I love that. I love that. So that is the end of today's webinar. And I just want to say thank you extremely for everybody that tuned in today. Thank you to our special guest, Mrs. Rose Johnson Smith. And I'm sure we all can say that we learned a lot today. And again, if you guys have not learned anything from this presentation, what I truly want everyone to come out of this, is that a word? What I really want everybody to really learn is about self-awareness, both as children, teen, adults, parents, because I think at the end of the day, if you're supposed to boil everything down, it comes down to self-awareness. Because if I'm aware of who I am and if I'm aware of your emotions and how you are feeling and what stage of life you're at, I'll be able to more adjust and to handle the situation better. So guys, thank you so much for joining. It means a lot. And I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.
Thank you, Shalisa. Bye.